Welcome to a new journey where we will explore the fundamental ideas of one of the most influential books in the history of economics, The Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith. Published in 1776, this book laid the foundations of modern economic thought, transforming the way we understand the production, distribution, and accumulation of wealth in nations. Throughout its pages, Smith provides a profound analysis of how nations grow rich and how markets, driven by competition and the invisible hand, can generate prosperity for all. In this work, Smith introduces revolutionary concepts like the division of labor, the role of the free market, and the importance of specialization in trade. Through his ideas, he invites us to reflect on how nations can maximize their economic welfare and improve the lives of their citizens. In this audiobook, we will explore Smith's teachings chapter by chapter, breaking down his concepts to understand how they apply in the contemporary world and how economic policies, markets, and investments can contribute to sustainable growth and greater prosperity. So get ready to dive into the principles of Adam Smith's classical economics, an author whose vision remains relevant for nations in the 21st century. Let's begin this journey toward wealth and economic development. Don't forget to subscribe to Audio Mentors, where we continue exploring key concepts for your personal and professional growth. Chapter 1. Introduction to the Wealth of Nations. In this first chapter, we explore the introduction to the Wealth of Nations, where Adam Smith presents his vision of how nations can prosper and what factors influence the accumulation of wealth. Published in 1776, this work not only marked a turning point in economic thought but also laid the groundwork for the development of theories that are still foundational in modern economics. What is the wealth of nations? Adam Smith defines the wealth of a nation not in terms of precious metals, as was commonly believed at the time, but in terms of the production and exchange of goods. According to Smith, the true wealth of a nation lies in its ability to produce and distribute goods and services, not merely in accumulating gold or silver. Through this approach, Smith diverts attention away from the prevailing mercantilist ideas of his time, which viewed the accumulation of precious metals as the primary measure of wealth. For Smith, labor is the true engine of wealth. The production of goods and services depends on the available workforce, and the specialization of workers increases the efficiency and productivity of the economy. This concept is known as the division of labor, which will be discussed in more depth in later chapters. The purpose of the book. Adam Smith's objective with The Wealth of Nations is to offer a comprehensive analysis of how nations generate wealth, how it is distributed, and what mechanisms make it possible for one nation to be wealthier than another. In this first chapter, Smith outlines his approach to the market economy, in which competition and free exchange play a central role. The invisible hand. One of Smith's most well-known ideas is that of the self-regulating market, which he describes as the invisible hand. According to this principle, when individuals act in their own self-interest in a free market, they indirectly benefit society at the same time. This concept highlights how markets, though driven by personal interest, can lead to outcomes that benefit everyone without the need for government intervention. Smith believes that competition and specialization are the main forces that allow a nation to produce more with less effort, which results in a better quality of life for all its citizens. Individuals, by seeking to maximize their own benefit, inadvertently contribute to the common good. The impact of the division of labor. One of the most influential points in Smith's thought is the concept of the division of labor. Specialization allows workers to focus on specific tasks, which increases productivity and enables nations to produce goods on a much larger scale. This idea is based on the observation that while one person may be capable of manufacturing a complete product, by dividing the process into specific tasks, several people can collaborate more efficiently and produce more. The division of labor not only makes production more efficient but also fosters exchange. By specializing in certain activities, people become more dependent on one another, which increases trade and promotes the growth of the national economy. A new approach to economics. This first chapter sets the stage for what will be a profound critique of the mercantilist ideas of the time, which promoted government intervention in markets and the accumulation of wealth through strict regulations. Smith, on the other hand, advocates for a system in which markets self-regulate, allowing economic freedom to be the foundation of growth and prosperity. Smith also emphasizes the importance of education and skill development so that workers can specialize in tasks that enhance productivity. In this way, education and access to knowledge become key pieces in improving the wealth of a nation. Final reflection. The introduction to The Wealth of Nations not only presents a shift in the way we think about economics but also marks a turning point in how nations should consider production, competition, and the free market. Adam Smith's vision remains a cornerstone of contemporary economic thought, and his emphasis on the division of labor and the invisible hand continues to influence economic policies today. This chapter invites us to reconsider the ways in which we understand wealth and how the principles of freedom, competition, and specialization can lead to a more prosperous society. As we move forward in the book, we will delve deeper into these concepts, exploring how nations create wealth and which factors are most important for ensuring lasting prosperity. And so, we conclude the first chapter. In the next, we will explore the concept of the division of labor and how worker specialization increases productivity and wealth in nations. Chapter 2. Labor as the Source of Wealth. In this chapter, Adam Smith dives deeper into the fundamental idea that labor is the true source of wealth in a nation. Instead of following the prevailing view of his time, which considered a country's wealth to be measured by the amount of precious metals it possessed, Smith argues that true wealth comes from a nation's ability to produce useful goods and services, and that this production process is primarily driven by labor. Labor and wealth. Smith notes that labor is not only the engine of production but also establishes the value of the products that are generated. The value of a good or service, according to Smith, is directly related to the labor that goes into it. This concept challenges the mercantilist idea that goods should be valued according to the amount of gold or silver they can be exchanged for, and instead proposes that labor is the true measure of value. The division of labor plays a crucial role in this process, as by specializing workers in specific tasks, productivity is increased and nations can produce more goods with less effort. By specializing, workers become more efficient in their tasks, which contributes to increasing the wealth of the nation. The importance of specialization. Smith highlights how specialization, or the division of labor, not only increases worker efficiency but also improves the quality of the goods produced. By focusing on one task, workers gain experience and skill in their craft, enabling them to produce more and better goods with fewer resources and less time. This specialization process, in turn, leads to greater profits for the economy. A classic example that Smith uses to explain specialization is the process of manufacturing pins, where different workers perform specific tasks, such as making the pinhead, the shaft, and the point. This division of tasks allows a small number of workers to produce a large quantity of pins compared to if each worker had to make a complete pin on their own. The impact of labor on the economy. Smith also explains how labor contributes to economic growth through the creation of new opportunities for exchange. As production increases due to specialization, products become more available and accessible to a larger number of people. This creates new markets and trade opportunities, which, in turn, increase demand and stimulate further production. In this sense, labor is not only the means by which wealth is generated but also allows for economic expansion through the exchange of goods and services across different regions, contributing to the development of an interconnected economy. The role of labor in agriculture and industry. Smith also emphasizes the importance of labor in two key areas: agriculture and industry. According to Smith, agriculture is the primary source of wealth in the early stages of a nation's economic development, as it provides the basic resources for life and sustenance. As a nation develops, industry and manufacturing play an increasing role, but they always depend on the initial labor in agriculture to provide the essential resources. In this context, Smith advocates for a balance between agriculture and industry, where agricultural labor remains fundamental to the nation's prosperity, while industry becomes a driving force for economic growth and development. The relationship between labor and capital. A crucial aspect of Smith's thinking is how capital and labor interact to generate wealth. Capital, represented by investment in tools, machinery, and resources, serves to increase labor productivity. However, capital cannot function efficiently without the labor that puts it into motion. Therefore, both must work together to maximize production and the wealth of a nation. Smith sees the accumulation of capital as a continuous process that depends on savings and investment. As workers save and invest in their own labor, through tools and technology, they increase their capacity to produce more and improve the quality of the goods they make. The effect of the division of labor on society. Smith also observes that the division of labor has effects not only on the economy but also on the social structure. Specialization creates more defined classes of workers, leading to greater social cohesion within specialized areas, but it can also generate inequality between the working classes and the owners of capital. However, Smith defends the idea that cooperation and competition within a market economy allow all classes to contribute to the common good. Competition generates efficiency, while cooperation between different sectors ensures that all aspects of the economy work together to maximize production and well-being. Final reflection. This chapter introduces us to the key idea that labor is the true engine of wealth in a nation. The division of labor and specialization increase productivity, improve the quality of goods and services, and allow nations to grow through trade and competition. Adam Smith invites us to consider how the collaboration between labor and capital, along with specialization, is essential to building a prosperous and sustainable economy. This vision not only underpins economic theory but also offers key lessons for contemporary nations seeking to create wealth and promote prosperity. With this understanding of labor and its relationship to wealth, we will move on to explore how the distribution of wealth impacts economies and social structures in the next chapter. Chapter 3. The Nature of Wealth. In this chapter, Adam Smith delves into the nature of wealth and its fundamental concept within economics. Throughout his work, Smith introduces crucial ideas to understand how nations become wealthy and how that wealth is measured, a notion that contrasts with the dominant ideas of his time. This chapter establishes the distinction between wealth and material values like gold or silver, proposing that the true wealth of a nation is not measured in precious metals but in the productive capacity and exchange of goods and services within the economy. Wealth is not just gold or silver. Adam Smith challenges the dominant mercantilist thought of his time, which considered nations to become wealthy primarily through the accumulation of gold and silver. Mercantilists believed that foreign trade was the only way to acquire these precious metals and, therefore, a sign of the nation's wealth. However, Smith argues that this is a conceptual error. For him, the true wealth of a nation is not in precious metals, but in the production of goods and services that are useful to society. Smith explains that the real wealth of a nation is made up of everything it produces, not just what it can accumulate in precious metal reserves. The goods that a nation can offer its citizens and other countries through trade are, in fact, what defines its wealth. This implies a more dynamic and functional view of the economy, where production and exchange are the true engines of growth and prosperity. The value of goods, labor, capital, and utility. Smith introduces a crucial distinction. The value of a good is not solely dependent on the amount of gold or silver it contains, but on the amount of labor required to produce it. Through this perspective, Smith establishes the labor theory of value as the foundation for determining the value of goods in an economy. According to him, goods have a value determined by the amount of labor invested in their production. This concept of the labor theory of value is key to Smith's economic theory and becomes a cornerstone of classical economic thought. Labor is the driving force behind production, and it is human labor that determines the real value of a good, rather than any measure of material wealth, such as precious metals. The influence of capital. While labor is the engine of production, capital also plays an essential role in wealth creation. Capital is not only a means for exchanging goods, but it is also the tool through which workers become more productive. Saving and investing in capital, such as tools, machinery, and buildings, increases labor efficiency, allowing more goods to be produced and thus increasing the nation's wealth. Smith observes that capital is fundamental for workers to produce more than they consume. By investing in infrastructure, technology, and machinery, capitalists increase the productive capacity of the economy. In this context, capital enables labor to be performed more efficiently and productively. Wealth and trade. Trade is another crucial element that allows nations to generate wealth. Smith argues that the free exchange of goods between individuals and nations not only allows for specialization and the division of labor but also optimizes the production and consumption of goods and services. Through trade, nations can access goods that they cannot produce internally, improving the quality of life for their citizens and contributing to national wealth. Moreover, exchange enables nations to specialize in what they do best, increasing efficiency and reducing the cost of goods. For example, a nation that has access to certain natural resources can export these resources to other nations in exchange for goods it cannot produce, allowing for mutual growth for both parties. This exchange is beneficial for all nations involved, as it allows each one to maximize efficiency and generate greater wealth. Wealth and consumption. Smith also addresses the relationship between production and consumption. For him, wealth is not measured by the amount of goods produced, but by the ability to consume those goods. That is, a nation can be rich not only because it produces a large amount of goods, but because its citizens have access to them and can enjoy their consumption. In this way, wealth is also related to the distribution of products in society and the level of well-being achieved by its inhabitants. Consumption is an indirect indicator of a nation's prosperity. If citizens can consume a wide variety of high-quality goods in an accessible manner, this reflects the wealth of the nation. The efficient distribution of goods and services is, therefore, a crucial factor in determining a nation's real wealth beyond its production capacity. Wealth and government. In his analysis, Smith does not overlook the role of government in the creation of wealth. While he defends market freedom and the importance of free trade between nations, he also points out that the government must ensure certain conditions for the system to function properly. This includes the protection of property, national defense, and the creation of public infrastructure, such as roads and ports, which facilitate trade and exchange. However, Smith warns against excessive government intervention, as it can destabilize the economy and slow economic growth. The government should act with moderation, protecting rights and fostering the conditions necessary for the market to operate efficiently, while avoiding excessive regulation. Final reflection. This chapter offers a comprehensive view of what wealth means in Adam Smith's economic thought. According to Smith, wealth is not simply measured by the amount of precious metals or tangible riches, but by the ability to produce and consume goods and services. Labor, capital, free trade, and efficient distribution of goods are the pillars that support a nation's wealth. Smith also invites us to reflect on how free markets and competition promote prosperity, while the government plays a role in ensuring that the conditions for that freedom are maintained. Nations become wealthy when they work together, fostering specialization, trade, and an equitable distribution of wealth. This approach, which seeks to combine economic freedom with the free exchange of goods, lays the foundation for the modern understanding of how a nation can prosper, based on labor and exchange as primary sources of wealth. In the next chapter, we will explore how the distribution of wealth among different social groups impacts the general well-being of the economy and the development of the nation. Chapter 4. The Role of the Market and the Invisible Hand. In this chapter, Adam Smith introduces one of the most influential and well-known concepts of his work, the invisible hand. Through this concept, Smith describes how markets can self-regulate without the need for direct government intervention. The market, being a space for competition and free exchange, is able to organize itself in such a way that individual interests lead to collective benefit. This phenomenon occurs when individuals, in pursuing their own interest, unintentionally contribute to the well-being of society. The invisible hand and self-interest. The concept of the invisible hand refers to the idea that, in a free market, each individual, by seeking to maximize their own benefit or wealth, contributes, without intention, to the general benefit of society. According to Smith, when people seek what is best for themselves, such as making a profit, personal interests align with the common good, without the need for centralized planning or state intervention. For example, a producer seeking to maximize their profits through the sale of a product does not do so with the intention of benefiting society, but to meet a demand others have. Through this process of satisfying consumer needs, the market self-regulates, and resources are distributed efficiently. The competition between producers and consumers ensures that goods are offered at fair prices, quality is optimized, and innovation is incentivized. Competition as the engine of the invisible hand. One of the crucial factors for the invisible hand to function is competition. In a free market, competition between producers ensures that goods are offered in the most efficient way possible, at fair prices and with the best quality. Consumers benefit from this competition, as they have access to more varied goods and services at lower prices. At the same time, producers are incentivized to improve their production processes and innovate to remain competitive. Smith argues that competition benefits all participants in the economy. As producers strive to meet consumer demand, productivity improves, innovation is encouraged, and efficiency is ensured. This, in turn, raises the standard of living for society as a whole, as goods become more accessible, quality improves, and prices tend to decrease. Self-regulation of the market. The self-regulation of the market is another fundamental idea of the invisible hand. According to Smith, markets function efficiently when they are allowed to operate without restrictions, as the prices of goods and services tend to adjust according to supply and demand. If a good is scarce and in high demand, its price will increase, which will incentivize producers to produce more, thus balancing supply with demand. On the other hand, if a good becomes too abundant and less desired, its price will decrease, reducing the production of that good. This automatic adjustment phenomenon occurs without any central authority imposing it, and is the natural result of competition and free exchange. Through this system, the market responds quickly to changes in consumer demand, improving the efficiency of resources. Specialization and market efficiency. Smith also links the concept of the invisible hand with the idea of specialization. In a free market, specialization is key to achieving higher productivity and efficiency. When workers and producers specialize in a particular task or good, they can do it with greater skill and efficiency, which increases the total production of goods and services. Additionally, specialization creates an environment where producers can offer goods that are cheaper and of better quality, since they are focused on producing something they know well. This benefits consumers, who receive products of greater value at more competitive prices. The role of government in the market. Although Smith defends the idea of the invisible hand, he also recognizes that there are situations where the government must intervene, but in a limited way. The government should not control the market or intervene in economic transactions, but it does have certain responsibilities where it must act to ensure the proper functioning of the market. These responsibilities include national defense. The government must ensure the security and protection of the nation, allowing trade and economic activities to proceed without external interference. Justice and order. The government must guarantee the protection of property rights and ensure that contracts are honored. Without a legal system that protects individuals and their property, the economy could not prosper. Infrastructure. The government may also intervene to build basic infrastructure, such as roads, bridges, and ports, which facilitate trade and improve market efficiency. However, outside of these fundamental areas, the government should refrain from intervening in economic activities and allow the market to self-regulate through competition and the invisible hand. The myth of state control of the economy. Adam Smith also combats the idea that state intervention is necessary to control and organize the economy. According to him, efforts to excessively regulate the economy often have negative effects, such as discouraging competition or creating inefficiencies. History has shown that nations that allow a free market with minimal state intervention tend to experience greater economic growth, as market forces are much more powerful in coordinating the production and consumption of goods and services than any centralized planning. The risk of market manipulation. While the market as a whole functions well under the principles of the invisible hand, Smith also points out that interest groups or monopolies may attempt to manipulate the market in their favor, restricting competition. In these cases, the market no longer operates efficiently, and competition is reduced. To prevent such practices, Smith suggests that, although state intervention should be minimal, the government must act when unfair practices arise that affect the general welfare of society. Final reflection. Adam Smith's invisible hand has had a profound and lasting impact on economic theory, offering a model of how free markets can generate positive outcomes without state intervention. However, Smith also acknowledges that the government has a limited but essential role in ensuring justice and order within the economy. The concept of the invisible hand demonstrates how competition and self-interest can produce collective benefits when the market is allowed to function freely. This chapter invites us to reflect on the importance of a free and competitive market, where individuals, guided by their own interests, act for the benefit of society without the need for centralized intervention. With these principles established, the next chapter will delve into how the distribution of wealth impacts the structure of the economy and social well-being. Chapter 5. Capital and the Accumulation of Wealth. In this chapter, Adam Smith delves into the concept of capital and its crucial role in the creation of wealth. Throughout this analysis, Smith explains how the accumulation of capital is an essential driver of economic growth, as it allows nations to invest in the production of goods and services, while also improving the productivity of workers. Capital is fundamental to making labor more efficient and productive, and it is the foundation on which long-term wealth is built. What is capital? Capital is defined by Adam Smith as money or resources used to produce other goods and services. This capital should not be confused with the wealth of a nation, but with the tool that enables the generation of wealth. Smith classifies capital into three fundamental types. Fixed capital. This includes machines, tools, factories, and buildings used to produce goods. Circulating capital. This is the money and goods used to purchase raw materials and other resources that are transformed into products. Human capital. This refers to the skills and knowledge of workers, which can also be seen as a type of capital, as human capabilities directly contribute to production and economic performance. Smith emphasizes that capital is accumulated through saving and investment. Those who save and invest in new projects, infrastructure, or technology are contributing to the growth of the economy. In this way, capital plays a decisive role in increasing the productivity of workers and in the creation of wealth. Capital accumulation. Capital accumulation is a process that depends on the decision to save rather than consume immediately. When individuals and businesses choose to save part of their income and reinvest it in new machines, tools, and technology, they are fostering economic growth. This accumulation process is crucial because capital allows workers to be more efficient, producing more goods and services with less effort. According to Smith, capital accumulation is a slow and gradual process, but it has exponential effects in the long term. By using capital effectively, producers can increase their output, which in turn generates more jobs, increases demand, and allows consumers to access higher quality and lower-cost products. This continuous cycle of accumulation and reinvestment drives the economic growth of nations. Saving and investment in the economy. Smith highlights that saving is essential for capital creation. Individuals and businesses that save their income and reinvest it in the economy are financing the creation of new goods and services. Saving also acts as a natural filter for profitable projects. Only those projects that are profitable or have growth potential will receive investments, leading to a more efficient allocation of resources. It is important to note that saving is not just a matter of refraining from spending, but also of investing wisely. Savings that are not invested or are stored inefficiently do not contribute to economic growth. Therefore, investing savings is key to the increase of wealth. The role of capital in productivity. One of the most important contributions of capital is its ability to increase worker productivity. Smith explains that workforce efficiency increases significantly when workers have tools and machinery at their disposal. A worker who has specialized machines to perform their task will be much more productive than one who relies solely on manual labor. This increase in productivity not only benefits the worker, but it also reduces production costs for entrepreneurs, allowing them to sell products at lower prices and better compete in international markets. Furthermore, an increase in productivity also has multiplier effects, as it lowers the price of goods and generates greater demand, thus driving economic growth. Capital and the distribution of wealth. Smith notes that capital has a significant impact on the distribution of wealth within a nation. As capital accumulates, the benefits of this accumulation tend to be distributed among different groups in society, particularly among workers, landowners, and capitalists. Capitalists, those who invest the capital, directly benefit from wealth accumulation, while workers experience an increase in their standard of living due to the growth in production and employment. Capital accumulation also has the effect of reducing inequality to the extent that employment is created and higher wages are generated. Additionally, through competition and specialization, the benefits of a more efficient market can reach all sectors of society, promoting equity and improving the living conditions of citizens. The impact of capital on international trade. Capital is not only essential for the growth of a nation's internal economy, but it also plays a crucial role in international trade. Nations with abundant capital can invest in trade infrastructure, such as ports, roads, and railways, which enhances their ability to export and import goods. Smith argues that international trade is a source of wealth for nations, and those countries that accumulate capital have the ability to expand their share in international markets. By investing in specialized production and advanced technology, nations are better positioned to compete in a global market and generate greater income through foreign trade. Investment in education and training. Finally, Smith addresses the importance of investing in human capital, i.e., the education and training of workers. The knowledge and skills of workers are as valuable as physical capital, as the qualification of the workforce directly influences productivity and the ability of companies to innovate. Nations that invest in education and professional training are not only increasing human capital, but they are also creating a more efficient workforce that contributes to economic growth. As workers specialize in high-value tasks, economies can progress toward higher productivity and generate more wealth for their citizens. Final reflection. This chapter emphasizes the importance of capital in the wealth creation process. The accumulation of capital, through saving and investment, is crucial for increasing productivity and efficiency in the economy. Smith shows us that capital not only includes money and machinery but also human capital and education. Nations that invest wisely in these assets will experience sustainable, long-term growth. The relationship between capital and labor is essential, as capital enables workers to be more productive, which translates into greater wealth for the nation as a whole. Capital accumulation benefits not only investors but also creates jobs, improves wages, and fosters more efficient trade. With these principles in mind, the next chapter will explore how the distribution of wealth impacts the economic and social structure of a nation. Chapter 6. The Distribution of Wealth. In this chapter, Adam Smith addresses the issue of wealth distribution within a nation, a crucial aspect of his economic theory. According to Smith, the distribution of wealth depends not only on the amount of goods and services a nation is capable of producing but also on how those goods and services are distributed among the various social classes: workers, capitalists, and landowners. The way wealth is distributed has a profound impact on the economic structure and social well-being, and it is a central topic in understanding how to promote a prosperous and equitable economy. The three social classes. Smith divides society into three main classes that participate differently in the creation and distribution of wealth. Workers, those who sell their labor in exchange for wages. They are responsible for producing goods and services that contribute to the nation's wealth. Capitalists, those who own capital, money, land, machinery, and invest it in production to generate profits. They finance production and benefit from the returns on their investments. Landowners, those who own land and natural resources. Landowners primarily earn income from the rent of their land and other natural resources they possess. The wage of workers. Smith explains that workers earn their income through wages, which vary according to the demand and supply of labor. Wages are the means of subsistence for workers, but their level is also determined by the productivity of labor, available capital, and market conditions. An important aspect of Smith's theory is that wages should be sufficient to cover the worker's basic needs, such as food, housing, and education. However, Smith also recognizes that wages are not always evenly distributed among all workers, as some may have more skills or be in sectors with higher demand, which allows them to earn higher wages. Competition plays an important role in this process. When the supply of labor exceeds demand, wages tend to decrease, and when demand exceeds supply, wages increase. The rents of landowners. Landowners are another important class in wealth distribution. Smith notes that landowners' income comes from the rents they charge for the use of their land. In an agricultural economy, these rents are a significant source of wealth for the nation, and the value of rent largely depends on the fertility of the land and the demand for agricultural products. However, Smith is also critical of landowners, as their wealth does not come directly from productive labor or investment. Landowners, according to Smith, tend to be a parasitic class that earns income simply from owning natural resources without contributing to the creation of economic value. In some cases, the land ownership system can generate inequality in wealth distribution, as landowners may accumulate large amounts of wealth without engaging in productive work. The capitalist and the accumulation of wealth. Capitalists play a crucial role in wealth creation, as they are the ones who invest in production and capital accumulation. Through their investments in businesses, industries, and trade, capitalists are responsible for job creation and the economic development of the nation. However, capitalists also have an interest in maximizing their profits, which can sometimes conflict with the well-being of workers. Smith points out that although capitalists tend to accumulate wealth through their investments, they are also a class exposed to market risks. Unlike landowners, capitalists are more dynamic because their investment in production drives the economy, creates jobs, and fosters economic development. Therefore, the accumulation of wealth by capitalists can be seen as a growth engine for the economy. The unequal distribution of wealth. One of Smith's most critical points about wealth distribution is that it is not always equitable. Although the market should be the means by which wealth is distributed efficiently, Smith acknowledges that there are inherent inequalities in the social and economic structure. The upper classes, such as landowners and capitalists, tend to accumulate wealth more rapidly than workers, who often do not have the power to accumulate capital or invest in production. Smith not only criticizes these inequalities, but also points out that the system of rent and wealth accumulation through inheritance can perpetuate these differences. Often, people who already have resources tend to concentrate more wealth, while those without capital or property are trapped in a cycle of low wages and limited opportunities for social mobility. However, Smith also recognizes that competition and innovation in a free economy have the potential to reduce inequalities, as improvements in productivity and the creation of new jobs can help increase the income of the working classes. Specialization and economic freedom may allow workers to improve their standard of living, contributing to a more equitable distribution of wealth. The role of government in wealth distribution. Although Smith advocates for a free economy without state intervention, he also acknowledges that the government plays an important role in regulating wealth distribution, especially when it comes to monopolies or abuses of power by the ruling classes. The government should ensure social justice by respecting property rights and protecting the disadvantaged from the negative effects of unequal wealth accumulation. Additionally, Smith considers that the government should be responsible for investing in infrastructure and education, which would allow workers to improve their human capital and access higher quality opportunities, promoting an environment where all citizens have the chance to progress. Final reflection. This chapter of The Wealth of Nations addresses how wealth is distributed among the different social classes within a nation and how economic inequalities are an inherent reality of the capitalist system. While wealth accumulation by capitalists and landowners can promote economic growth, it also raises issues related to inequality and lack of social mobility. However, competition, specialization, and free trade have the potential to improve wealth distribution as they increase productivity and job creation. State intervention, while minimal, may also be necessary to ensure justice and ensure that the benefits of economic growth reach the entire population. In the next chapter, we will explore the role of the market in wealth creation and how competition and the invisible hand contribute to the self-regulation of the economy. Chapter 7. International Trade and Specialization. In this chapter, Adam Smith addresses the crucial topic of international trade and specialization, two key concepts to understand how nations can maximize their wealth through global exchanges. Specializing in the production of goods in which a nation has a comparative advantage allows for resource optimization and trade expansion, which, in turn, generates mutual benefits for all nations involved. The value of international trade. Smith argues that international trade is a fundamental source of wealth for nations. By participating in international trade, nations can exchange the goods they produce more efficiently for those goods that other nations produce with a comparative advantage. This allows each country to specialize in what it does best and most efficiently, which increases global productivity and, therefore, the wealth of all. Instead of each nation trying to be self-sufficient in all goods and services, which would be inefficient, Smith suggests that nations benefit from mutual exchange. This approach encourages international cooperation, where competition moves from national markets to international markets. Specialization and comparative advantage. One of the most revolutionary ideas in Smith's work is the concept of specialization. By focusing on the production of a single good or service, a nation can increase efficiency and optimize resources. Smith explains that through specialization, a nation can produce more with less, allowing costs to be lowered and the quality of goods improved. For example, if a nation is very efficient in cotton production but not in clothing, it can specialize in cotton production and then trade with other nations that have an advantage in clothing production. This type of specialization allows nations to maximize their resources, producing more of what they do best and then exchanging those products with other countries. The theory of absolute advantage and exchange. Adam Smith introduces the idea that when a country has an absolute advantage in the production of a good, i.e., it produces that good more efficiently than any other nation, trade becomes an opportunity to exchange goods between countries. If a country can produce more of a good with fewer resources, that country has an absolute advantage, making its production more competitive in the global market. This exchange between countries with absolute advantages in different products benefits all parties involved, as everyone gains by obtaining goods more efficiently. International trade, then, is a way to create additional value and expand wealth, allowing each nation to access products that they could not otherwise produce efficiently. The myth of protectionist trade. Smith also combats the idea of protectionism, which was common in his time. Protectionism involves imposing tariffs and restrictions on international trade to protect domestic industries from foreign competition. Smith argues that while this policy seeks to protect domestic producers, it is actually detrimental to overall welfare, as it limits the exchange of goods and restricts economic efficiency. According to Smith, protectionism increases the prices of goods for consumers and reduces employment opportunities by preventing more productive industries from flourishing. Moreover, trade barriers hinder global economic growth, as countries cannot specialize in what they do best and, therefore, fail to maximize their resources. International trade and mutual benefit. Smith emphasizes that international trade is not a competition between nations, but a process of mutual benefit. Each nation can benefit from specializing in the production of certain goods and then exchanging them with other nations, with no loss to any of them. This exchange creates a win-win situation in which all countries can increase their wealth through specialization and free trade. The fundamental principle here is that by allowing nations to specialize and trade with each other, the global economy becomes more efficient and productive, which benefits everyone. Each nation obtains the products it needs more cheaply, while at the same time, its own products become accessible in international markets, broadening its access to new consumers. The benefits of free trade. Adam Smith asserts that free trade and specialization are the greatest drivers of global prosperity. By allowing countries to focus on what they produce best, the global market becomes more efficient and resources are used more effectively. Prices tend to drop, quality improves, and ultimately, all nations benefit from participating in the free trade system. Smith also highlights how free trade allows nations to improve their technology, learn new production techniques, and innovate, contributing to global economic progress. Innovation and the development of new technologies are accelerated when markets are open, as nations have access to a greater variety of resources and competition. The role of government in international trade. Although Smith is a strong advocate of free trade, he also acknowledges that there are situations in which the government has a role to play. The government should ensure that markets are fair and open and that trade is conducted under rules that benefit all nations involved. The government is also responsible for defending the domestic market and ensuring that trade agreements are beneficial for all countries involved. However, Smith warns that the government should not excessively intervene in markets but should allow free trade to function so that nations can take advantage of the benefits of specialization and exchange. Final reflection. In this chapter, Adam Smith presents international trade as one of the keys to global wealth. Through specialization and free exchange, nations can maximize their resources, improve their productivity, and generate mutual benefits. Competition and the freedom of trade not only drive the economic development of nations but also create a system in which everyone can thrive. The chapter also serves as a critique of protectionist policies that limit competition and economic growth, advocating for the creation of a free and competitive global market. By allowing nations to specialize and trade without restrictions, all countries can significantly increase their wealth. In the next chapter, we will explore how the price system and competition regulate the production and distribution of goods, and how prices serve as a key signal in a free economy. Chapter 8. The Price System and Competition. In this chapter, Adam Smith delves into how prices and competition play a central role in the efficient distribution of resources within a market economy. According to Smith, the price system is the key tool to ensure that goods and services are produced in the right quantities and allocated efficiently to consumers. Competition, in turn, ensures that prices are fair, goods are of quality, and markets continue to function without the need for state intervention. The price system. The price system is fundamental to understanding how a free market operates. According to Smith, prices act as signals that transmit crucial information between producers and consumers. Prices not only reflect the scarcity of a good, but also inform producers about market demand, allowing consumers to make decisions about which goods to buy and how much they are willing to pay for them. When a good becomes scarce and demand increases, its price rises. This price increase acts as a signal for producers, telling them that they should produce more of that good to take advantage of the opportunity to earn higher profits. On the other hand, when a good is abundant and demand decreases, its price falls, which encourages producers to reduce production of that good, avoiding the waste of resources. In this way, the price system allows scarce resources to be allocated efficiently, guiding both producers and consumers to align their decisions with market realities. This happens without the need for central planning or state intervention, as prices operate autonomously, ensuring resources are used where they are most needed. Competition in the market. Smith also discusses the fundamental role of competition in a free market. In a competitive economic system, producers strive to offer the best products at the lowest prices, which benefits consumers by providing them with better quality goods at more affordable prices. Competition not only benefits consumers but also fosters innovation and efficiency in production. When several companies compete with each other, they have the incentive to continuously improve their products and services to differentiate themselves and attract more customers. Additionally, competition ensures that prices stay within reasonable ranges, preventing companies from raising prices unduly or exploiting consumers. The competitive system acts as a natural brake against monopoly. In a monopolistic market, a single company has the power to control prices and the supply of a good, which can result in high prices and low-quality products. Competition prevents these negative effects, ensuring that there are always alternatives available to consumers. Prices as market regulators. One of Smith's key points is that prices act as market regulators. Prices not only reflect the forces of supply and demand but also help balance production and consumption. When prices rise due to increased demand, producers are incentivized to increase production to meet that demand. On the other hand, when prices fall, producers adjust their production to avoid oversupply. This automatic adjustment mechanism ensures that resources are allocated where they are most needed and that production aligns with market needs. Moreover, Competition between companies guarantees that the price adjustment process takes place efficiently and without external intervention. The impact of competition on innovation. Another important aspect that Smith highlights is that competition not only regulates prices but also drives innovation. When companies compete to attract consumers, they have the incentive to improve their products and production processes. This leads to constant innovation in the industry, which benefits the economy as a whole, as new products and services can enhance the quality of life for citizens. Competition also fosters cost reduction. Companies are forced to find more efficient ways to produce goods to keep their prices competitive, which generates long-term benefits for society. In this context, competition not only improves the quality of products but also allows consumers to access cheaper goods. The relationship between prices and wages. Smith also addresses the relationship between prices and wages in a competitive market. In a free market system, wages tend to adjust based on the demand for labor and the productivity of workers. If the demand for a particular type of labor increases, wages for those workers rise, encouraging more people to enter that profession. Conversely, if demand decreases, wages tend to fall. This adjustment of wages in response to demand and productivity is an essential feature of the price system. The prices of goods and wages are constantly adjusting based on market conditions, ensuring that resources, including labor, are allocated efficiently. The role of government in prices and competition. Although Smith is a strong advocate of free markets, he also acknowledges that the government has an important role in ensuring markets operate fairly and that competition is not distorted by unfair practices or monopolies. In this sense, the government should act to guarantee freedom of competition and prevent companies from using their power to exploit consumers. However, Smith also warns against excessive government intervention in the market. The government should only intervene when necessary to ensure the fair functioning of the market, preventing companies or individuals from cornering the market and generating inefficiencies. Final reflection. In this chapter, Adam Smith establishes the price system and competition as the pillars of a successful market economy. Prices act as signals that regulate production and consumption, while competition ensures that prices remain fair, goods are of high quality, and businesses continue to innovate. Through these mechanisms, the free market can self-regulate efficiently, maximizing social welfare. Smith also acknowledges that the government has a limited role in regulating markets, especially when it comes to preventing monopolies and ensuring fair competition. However, the free market is the best tool to foster economic growth, innovation, and overall welfare. This chapter invites us to reflect on how a competitive market, based on fair prices and healthy competition, is the key to achieving a prosperous society. In the next chapter, we will explore how social justice and taxation can influence the distribution of wealth and the overall functioning of the economy. Chapter 9. Taxes and Social Justice. In this chapter, Adam Smith analyzes the role of taxes in the economy, addressing how they must be fair, equitable, and effective to promote the welfare of society. While Smith advocates for market freedom, he also acknowledges that the government must have the capacity to raise funds to finance its responsibilities, such as national defense, administering justice, and building public infrastructure. However, for Smith, taxes should be designed in a way that does not interfere with free trade and productivity, and they should be distributed fairly among all citizens. The justification of taxes. Adam Smith begins this chapter by recognizing that the government needs funds to carry out its essential functions. However, not all government expenditures are equally important. The government should limit its intervention to areas that truly benefit public welfare, such as defense, public safety, and creating basic infrastructure that enables trade and national prosperity. Smith argues that taxes are necessary to finance these essential services, but warns that excessive or poorly managed taxes can harm the economy. Taxes should be reasonable and not hinder individuals' ability to create wealth. The principles of fiscal justice. Smith establishes 4 key principles that should guide the imposition of taxes in any nation. Equity. Taxes must be fair, meaning each person should pay according to their ability to pay. People with higher incomes or wealth should contribute proportionally more to public funds. This principle ensures there is no inequality in the tax burden and that the wealthiest do not benefit from a lower tax burden. Certainty. Taxes must be clear and predictable. Citizens should know how much they owe, when payments are due, and how they should make payments. This prevents the uncertainty and difficulties that might arise from an ambiguous or arbitrary tax system. Certainty in taxes allows individuals and businesses to plan ahead and avoid fiscal surprises. Convenience. Taxes should be collected in a manner that makes it easy and convenient for citizens to meet their obligations. The administration of the tax system should be simple and efficient, so it does not impose unnecessary burdens on taxpayers or the government. Tax collection should be a smooth process that does not cause stress or distract from productivity. Economy. The costs of collecting taxes should be as low as possible. The government should avoid unnecessary expenditures in administering the tax system. Public resources should be used efficiently, without the cost of tax collection exceeding the revenue generated. The impact of taxes on the economy. Although Smith acknowledges that taxes are necessary, he also recognizes that high taxes can have negative effects on the economy. Excessive taxes can discourage investment, reduce savings, and increase the cost of production. This can affect workers' productivity and limit employment opportunities. Furthermore, taxes should be proportional to the benefits each individual receives. For example, those who benefit most from public infrastructure or the protection provided by the government should contribute more to the tax system. However, Smith also acknowledges that the government must be prudent and not tax citizens so heavily that it undermines the foundations of wealth creation. Consumption taxes versus property taxes. Smith makes an important distinction between consumption taxes and property taxes. According to him, consumption taxes are preferable because they do not distort individual behavior as much. By taxing consumption, individuals have the option to reduce their spending, which does not necessarily affect their ability to work or invest. These taxes are easier to collect and allow citizens to control their tax burden by choosing what and how much to consume. On the other hand, property taxes can be more problematic, as they directly affect the ability to invest and accumulate wealth. A high property tax could discourage investment in real estate, capital, and other productive areas, potentially slowing economic growth. Smith also suggests that property taxes should be related to the benefits a person receives from public services, ensuring that the wealthiest do not disproportionately benefit from the tax system. Trade and the fair distribution of wealth. One of Smith's concerns is how taxes can influence the distribution of wealth. While the free market allows individuals to pursue their own interests and generate wealth, well-designed taxes can correct inequalities in the distribution of that wealth. By collecting taxes fairly and using those funds to finance public services, such as education, healthcare, and infrastructure, the government can help improve the well-being of all citizens, including those at an economic disadvantage. The need to balance the tax burden. Smith emphasizes the importance of balancing the tax burden so that it does not overwhelm the working classes or entrepreneurs who contribute to economic growth. Taxes should be sufficient to finance the government's needs but not so high that they prevent people from fully participating in the economy. A progressive tax system, where the wealthiest pay proportionally more, is the most suitable way to distribute the costs of public services. Final reflection. In this chapter, Adam Smith establishes a tax system based on principles of equity, certainty, convenience, and economy. For him, the government must ensure that taxes are fair and do not interfere with wealth creation. Taxes should be designed in a way that does not discourage work, savings, or investment, and should contribute to the overall welfare of society. The tax system should be transparent and easy to understand, allowing citizens to meet their obligations without causing them difficulties. Additionally, taxes should be balanced to ensure that all social groups contribute proportionally to the financing of public goods and services. In the next chapter, we will explore how the labor market and competition influence wealth creation and how workers contribute to economic progress. Chapter 10. Money and the Monetary System. In this chapter, Adam Smith explores the crucial role of money and the monetary system in the functioning of an economy. Money, as a medium of exchange, facilitates trade and allows for an efficient distribution of resources within a nation. Smith examines how the creation of money and the value of currency influence economic relationships, and how a well-managed monetary system can contribute to the prosperity of a nation. The function of money. Money is fundamental in any economy as it serves as a medium of exchange, a unit of account, and a store of value. Instead of directly exchanging goods, which requires both participants to have what the other desires, money facilitates trade by being a commonly accepted good that can be exchanged for almost any other good or service. Smith highlights that money also allows individuals to consistently measure the value of goods, making it easier to compare prices and plan economically. In a system without money, prices would be much harder to determine, and trade would be far more complicated. Money as a store of value. In addition to being a medium of exchange, money also acts as a store of value. People can save their wealth in the form of money, allowing them to defer the consumption of goods until a later time without their wealth depreciating significantly. This ability to store value facilitates both saving and investment, as individuals and businesses can accumulate money and use it in the future to purchase goods or invest in productive projects. However, Smith also notes that the value of money can be affected by external factors such as inflation. If the government issues more money than is in circulation, the value of money decreases, raising the prices of goods and reducing citizens' purchasing power. The creation of money and the role of government. Smith examines the role of government in managing money and its relationship with money creation. In Smith's time, the government had a monopoly on creating currency. Smith recognizes that a responsible government must manage the money supply prudently, avoiding excessive issuance that could lead to inflation. However, it is also crucial for the government to ensure there is enough money in circulation to facilitate trade without devaluing the currency. In this regard, Smith warns against the monopolization of money creation by the government, as poor management of monetary policy can harm the economy. The creation of money should be controlled to maintain a balance between the money supply and the amount of goods available in the economy. Banking and credit. Smith also addresses the role of banking and credit in the economy. During his time, banking was still in its early stages, but Smith acknowledges that banking institutions play an important role in money creation through the issuance of bills and the granting of loans. Banks facilitate the flow of money in the economy, allowing businesses to finance new projects and individuals to obtain credit to acquire durable goods. However, Smith cautions that excessive lending and money creation through credit can be dangerous if not properly regulated, as it can generate financial bubbles and economic crises. The expansion of credit must be carefully controlled to ensure there is not an excess of money in circulation that could lead to inflation or asset overvaluation. International trade and money. The monetary system also has a significant impact on international trade. Smith observes that currencies and the value of each nation's money play a crucial role in trade relationships between countries. Fluctuations in the value of money can influence the cost of imported products and affect exports. When a currency depreciates, exported products from that nation become cheaper for foreign buyers, which can increase exports and improve the trade balance. Conversely, if a currency appreciates too much, exports can become more expensive, which may reduce the competitiveness of the nation's products in international markets. In this context, Smith suggests that governments should maintain monetary policies that favor the stability of their currencies in international markets, ensuring that the currency's value is not affected by excessive money issuance or manipulation of exchange rates. The currency and the wealth of the nation. The value of the currency is directly related to the wealth of a nation. Smith argues that wealthy nations tend to have strong currencies that are widely accepted in international trade, allowing them to benefit from favorable trade conditions. A strong currency reflects the nation's economic strength and its ability to produce high-quality goods and meet its financial commitments. On the other hand, a weak or unstable currency may be a sign of economic instability and can negatively affect investor confidence and international trade relations. Therefore, a country's monetary policy has a direct impact on its economic prosperity and its ability to generate sustainable wealth. Final reflection. This chapter offers a deep understanding of money and its fundamental role in the economy. Smith reminds us that a stable currency is essential for the efficient functioning of markets and international trade. The monetary system must be managed prudently, ensuring that there is enough money in circulation to facilitate trade, but without falling into the trap of inflation or excessive money issuance. Through proper management of money, banking, and credit, nations can secure their economic growth and maximize their wealth. The role of money in the global economy and its impact on international trade is also crucial for understanding how nations interact with each other and how responsible monetary policy can contribute to the prosperity of all. In the next chapter, we will explore how agriculture plays a crucial role in wealth creation and how nations must balance the production of material goods to achieve sustainable economic growth. Chapter 11. Government Intervention in the Economy. In this chapter, Adam Smith addresses the role of government in the economy and examines how its interventions can affect the economic development of a nation. Despite being known for his ideas about free markets, Smith acknowledges that the government has a number of responsibilities that are crucial to the general welfare of society. However, he also emphasizes that the government should intervene moderately and only in areas where it is truly necessary, as excessive intervention can harm the economy and restrict economic freedom. The basic role of government. Smith begins the chapter by identifying the essential functions of government in the economy. In his view, the government has three fundamental responsibilities. National defense. The government must protect the country from external threats, ensuring national security and sovereignty. Defense is seen as a public good that benefits all citizens, and the government should take responsibility for military protection. Administration of justice. It is essential for the government to maintain a legal system that ensures the protection of property rights and enforces contracts. The existence of a fair judicial system allows people to trust the market and engage in trade without fear of fraud or theft. Provision of public goods. The government must intervene to provide infrastructure and public services that cannot be efficiently provided by the private sector. These include the construction of roads, ports, schools, and hospitals, which are necessary for the proper functioning of the economy. The free market and limited intervention. Despite the need for intervention in certain areas, Smith is a strong advocate for free markets and competition. According to him, the market should operate without restrictions in most cases, as the invisible hand of the market, driven by self-interest, ensures that resources are allocated efficiently. Government intervention, while necessary in certain aspects, should be limited to areas where the market cannot function properly. Smith warns that excessive market intervention can have negative effects, such as distorting prices and causing economic inefficiency. Instead of directly interfering with market dynamics, the government should focus on maintaining the necessary conditions for the market to function properly. These conditions include the protection of private property, the enforcement of contracts, and the provision of public goods that enable free trade. Monopolies and government intervention. Smith dedicates a section of this chapter to discussing how monopolies and unfair practices can harm the economy. A monopoly occurs when a single company dominates a market, allowing it to control prices and reduce the quality of products due to the lack of competition. This concentration of economic power harms not only consumers but also reduces overall economic efficiency. The government has the responsibility to act against monopolies and business combinations that seek to limit competition, as these harm both consumers and the health of the market. Smith emphasizes that competition is essential for innovation and economic progress, and the government must ensure that markets remain open and accessible to all businesses. Corruption and government. Smith also acknowledges that the government can be susceptible to corruption, which is a significant obstacle to economic development. Government corruption can undermine the effectiveness of public policies and create an inefficient business environment. Furthermore, when resources are squandered or allocated to unnecessary projects, it harms the nation's competitiveness. The government must be transparent and accountable in managing public resources. Smith argues that justice and equity should prevail in all government interventions to ensure that policies do not favor a few at the expense of the majority. The problem of unemployment and intervention. An additional issue Smith addresses is the problem of unemployment and how the government should intervene to promote employment without distorting the market. Smith believes that unemployment is largely the result of inefficiencies in the distribution of the workforce and the lack of access to education. However, it is the government's responsibility to create an environment where workers can acquire skills and find employment in productive sectors. Although Smith does not support restrictive labor policies or excessive regulations, he recognizes that the government must intervene to ensure workers receive education and have access to job opportunities. Like with other aspects of the economy, intervention should be limited and focused on facilitating labor mobility and access to new opportunities. The role of government in currency regulation. Smith also discusses the role of government in managing currency and how monetary policy can affect the market. Although in his time the control of currency was the responsibility of governments, Smith warns that excessive issuance of money can lead to inflation and depreciation of the currency's value. The government must act with prudence and moderation when regulating the money supply to ensure the currency maintains its value and does not distort the functioning of the market. Final reflection. In this chapter, Adam Smith highlights that the government should play a limited role in the economy, focused on ensuring justice and public welfare. Despite his preference for free markets, Smith recognizes that the government has essential responsibilities, such as national defense, the administration of justice, and the provision of public goods. However, its intervention must be moderate and focused on areas where the market cannot operate efficiently. The government must avoid excessive interference in markets, as this can harm competition and innovation, both of which are essential for economic growth. Through careful and fair intervention, the government can ensure that the market functions optimally, promoting economic growth and social welfare. In the next chapter, we will explore how war and conflict can negatively affect the wealth of nations, distorting production and trade, and creating economic inequalities. Chapter 12. The Effect of War on the Wealth of Nations. In this chapter, Adam Smith examines how wars affect the wealth and prosperity of nations. Throughout history, military conflicts have had profound impacts on economies, and Smith devotes this chapter to reflecting on how wars not only destroy resources but also alter the dynamics of trade, production, and economic development in the countries involved. While wars can have short-term effects on power and national security, the negative economic effects can be devastating in the long term. The destruction of resources during war. One of Smith's most fundamental observations is that war tends to be destructive to the economies of nations. The natural and financial resources that could have been invested in the production of goods and services are diverted to financing military operations, affecting the nation's capacity to create wealth. Resources that could have contributed to economic growth, such as land, labor, and capital, are used for war efforts, which creates waste and limits the possibilities for economic expansion. The direct and indirect damage from wars to human and material resources is so devastating that economies destabilized by war often require decades to fully recover. Productive infrastructure, such as factories, roads, and ports, may be destroyed, making trade and economic reconstruction difficult. As a result, the costs of war are not just economic but also social, affecting the quality of life of citizens and generating social inequalities. The decrease in productivity. Smith observes that war not only destroys material resources but also reduces the productivity of the workforce. The dedication of labor to the war effort means fewer people are working in the production of goods and services that keep the economy functioning. Instead of being involved in productive activities, many workers are mobilized to serve in the army or provide for the war effort, creating a labor shortage in key industries. This displacement of human resources limits production capacity and increases the overall costs of goods, affecting both supply and demand. The decrease in productivity. The decrease in productivity also occurs due to the economic uncertainty caused by war. People become less willing to invest or start businesses due to fear of the negative effects war can have on markets. Investors may choose to suspend their projects, and companies may reduce production in anticipation of the risks associated with war, leading to a setback in economic growth. The impact on international trade. International trade is another area profoundly affected by war. Wars often disrupt trade routes and alter the balance of power between countries. Trade barriers imposed by governments during conflicts, such as tariffs, blockades, and sanctions limit the ability of countries to exchange goods and services with other nations, restricting the accumulation of wealth. Smith explains that, during war, trade relations between countries tend to become more contentious. Nations involved in mutual trade are forced to interrupt or reduce exchanges, creating a shortage of resources and international markets for domestic products. This, in turn, leads to negative economic effects by reducing export and import opportunities, directly impacting the competitiveness of national industries. Inflation and war financing. Smith also analyzes how war is often financed through high taxes and the issuance of public debt. These financing methods can have detrimental consequences for the economy. High taxes reduce the disposable income of citizens and businesses, limiting consumption and investment in the economy. This can lead to short and long-term economic contraction. Debt accumulation also has harmful effects, as the government takes on public debt to finance the war, which can lead to inflation if the debt is financed by issuing more money. As the money supply increases, the currency value may decrease, raising the prices of goods and reducing the purchasing power of citizens. Post-war economic recovery. Although Smith acknowledges that nations may eventually recover from the devastating effects of war, he notes that economic recovery is usually slow and costly. Rebuilding infrastructure, returning the workforce to production, and restoring confidence in markets require time and resources. However, Smith also points out that, in some cases, nations can find new growth opportunities after the war if appropriate reforms are implemented and productive investments are encouraged. Often, destroyed resources can be replaced, and technological progress may accelerate in certain areas as a result of war efforts. However, this recovery is not guaranteed, and the social inequality and human costs of war can persist long after the conflict has ended. Final reflection. This chapter highlights the destructive and costly effects that wars have on a nation's wealth. While wars can have temporary impacts on the distribution of power and security of a country, the economic effects of military conflicts are profoundly negative. The destruction of resources, loss of productivity, disruptions in trade, and inflation are consequences that hinder economic growth and create inequality and debt. Smith invites us to reflect on how free trade and international cooperation are much more effective in promoting wealth and prosperity for nations than military conflicts. In a world without wars, countries can focus on wealth creation, specialization, and mutual exchange, leading to sustained economic growth and shared benefits for all. In the next chapter, we will explore how agriculture remains a fundamental pillar in the wealth of nations and how its development is essential for economic growth. Chapter 13. Agriculture as the basis of wealth. In this chapter, Adam Smith highlights agriculture as the fundamental basis of a nation's wealth. While industry and trade are essential for the economic growth of modern nations, Smith argues that agriculture remains the backbone upon which national prosperity is built. Agricultural production not only provides food but also supplies essential raw materials for other industries and generates the economic surplus that allows for the development of other productive activities. Agriculture as the primary source of wealth. Smith begins the chapter by stating that agriculture is the primary source of wealth in the early stages of a nation's development. In primitive economies, land is the main productive resource, and the labor of the population is primarily devoted to agriculture. Through working the land, nations produce the basic goods that enable their population's survival and sustain economic activities. Agricultural production not only involves harvesting food but also creating raw materials used in other industries, such as cotton, timber, or stone. Therefore, a nation's prosperity is directly related to the ability of its agriculture to sustain and feed its population, as well as to provide natural resources for manufacturing industries. The relationship between agriculture and industry. While Smith acknowledges the importance of agriculture as the initial base of wealth, he also emphasizes that industries and trade are directly dependent on agricultural production. Manufactured goods require raw materials that come from the land, and food industries depend on agricultural capacity to feed workers. Smith explains that a balanced economy requires both agriculture and industry to function efficiently. While agriculture is responsible for producing basic resources, Industry adds value to these resources, transforming them into more complex and valuable products. This transformation process is crucial for the economic growth of any nation. The productivity of land and capital. Smith makes a key distinction between fertile land and unproductive land, emphasizing that agricultural productivity is directly related to the quality of the land and the amount of labor invested in it. In regions with fertile land, agricultural yields are higher, allowing for greater production of basic goods. However, in regions with less fertile land, farmers must invest more labor and capital in the production process to achieve similar results. Capital plays a crucial role in agriculture, as it allows farmers to invest in tools, machinery, and better farming techniques. As capital invested in agriculture increases, land productivity improves, resulting in more products generated with less labor. Smith views this relationship between capital and productivity as an essential factor for the growth of wealth in nations. Land ownership and productivity. Smith also emphasizes the importance of land ownership in wealth creation. Private land ownership provides an economic incentive for farmers to improve and maintain their land. Landowners who own private land are more likely to invest in improving their land through irrigation, crop rotation, etc., increasing productivity and, consequently, the wealth of the nation. The right to property ensures that farmers receive the benefits of improvements made to the land, motivating them to invest resources in it. Without security of property, farmers would have no incentive to make long-term improvements, reducing the efficiency and profitability of agriculture. The role of labor in agriculture. Labor is an essential component of agricultural production, and Smith points out that, in the early stages of the economy, most of the workforce is dedicated to fieldwork. Farmers engage in activities such as planting, harvesting, and land maintenance, which requires not only physical labor but also an increasing amount of specialized knowledge. Smith also discusses the importance of improving the skills and knowledge of agricultural workers to increase productivity. Specialized labor in agriculture, combined with capital investment and technology, can generate higher production with less effort. This is essential to ensure that agriculture continues to be a driver of growth in developing economies. Agriculture and international trade. Agriculture also plays a key role in international trade, as many agricultural goods are exchanged between nations. Smith argues that the free trade of agricultural products, such as wheat, cotton, or fish, can benefit all the nations involved. By specializing in the production of certain agricultural products that can be traded internationally, nations can access a greater variety of goods at lower prices. The trade of agricultural goods allows nations to optimize their resources and specialize in what they produce most efficiently. As with other goods, specialization and international exchange promote a more efficient distribution of agricultural resources, resulting in greater global prosperity. Final reflection. This chapter underscores agriculture as a central component of the wealth of nations. Land, agricultural labor, and private property are fundamental for the production of essential goods and the sustainability of economies. Smith demonstrates how, through agricultural productivity, nations can create a solid foundation for economic growth and international trade. Although industry and trade play crucial roles in modern economies, agriculture remains the backbone upon which all prosperity is built. Improving agricultural productivity through investment and specialized knowledge is essential to ensuring that economies remain productive and capable of competing in global markets. In the next chapter, we will explore how industry and manufacturing become drivers of economic growth and key sources of wealth for advanced nations. Chapter 14. Industry and Manufacturing. In this chapter, Adam Smith explores industry and manufacturing as essential drivers of wealth in more advanced economies. While agriculture lays the foundation upon which wealth is built, it is industry that enables nations to generate added value from natural resources and create a dynamic economy that can compete in the global market. Smith notes that industry plays a crucial role in the transformation of basic goods into more complex and useful products, thus contributing to economic progress. The transformation of resources into valuable products. Smith begins this chapter by highlighting the role of industry in transforming raw materials into higher value-added products. Through manufacturing, basic goods such as cotton, wood, or metal are turned into final products that can be used by consumers or exported to other markets. Industry not only generates employment and wealth but also increases efficiency and productivity by applying techniques and utilizing advanced machinery. Smith emphasizes that, while natural resources are important, it is innovation and industrial work that allow value to be added to these resources. Without industry and manufacturing, nations would not be able to compete globally or generate the level of wealth necessary to sustain economic growth. Specialization in production. A key theme that Smith addresses in this chapter is specialization within industry. Following his theory of the division of labor, Smith explains that specialization in individual tasks within factories and workshops improves worker productivity and reduces production costs. The division of labor allows each worker to focus on a specific task, enhancing their skill and increasing efficiency. This process of specialization is one of the main drivers of wealth, as each worker can produce more in less time, generating greater benefits for both producers and consumers. Specialization not only improves productivity but also facilitates innovation. When workers specialize in a task, they have more time and capacity to find better and more efficient ways of doing their work. This not only improves product quality but also reduces costs, making products more accessible and competitive. The role of machinery in industry. Smith highlights that technological development and the use of machinery play a central role in industrial progress. As machines and tools become more sophisticated, workers can produce goods more quickly and accurately. This increases industrial productivity and allows for mass production of goods, reducing costs and increasing supply in the market. The use of advanced machinery benefits not only producers but also reduces prices for consumers. Manufactured products made with advanced technology are of higher quality and more accessible, allowing nations to raise their standard of living. Competition and industrial innovation. Another key point Smith addresses is the relationship between competition and innovation in industry. In a free market, companies compete with each other to meet consumer needs, which drives innovation and improves efficiency. Smith argues that competition is an essential driver of industrial progress, as companies are constantly forced to improve in order to remain competitive. Competition not only reduces prices and improves quality but also encourages the creation of new products and the development of new technologies. Faced with competition, companies must innovate to offer unique and enhanced products, benefiting both consumers and the economy as a whole. Smith points out that free trade and competition in industry are crucial to ensure resources are allocated efficiently and that companies produce only the goods that consumers truly need and desire. The benefits of industry for the national economy. Industry not only generates wealth for companies and workers but also has a positive impact on the national economy as a whole. Industrial production increases employment and reduces poverty, as the creation of new factories and companies generates a constant demand for labor. Additionally, industry adds value to natural resources, increasing the country's gross domestic product (GDP). Smith also highlights that an industrialized nation has a competitive advantage in the global market, as its ability to produce high-quality goods in large quantities allows it to compete with other nations in international markets. Industry is an engine of economic growth, as it not only improves the quality of life for citizens but also strengthens a nation's position in global trade. The impact of industry on society. In addition to the economic benefits, Smith also acknowledges that industry has a positive social impact on nations. Industrial growth creates stable, well-paying jobs, improving the well-being of workers and their families. It also encourages social mobility, as workers can improve their standard of living as they specialize and increase their skills. Industrialization enables nations to become more prosperous societies, where workers have access to goods and services that improve their quality of life. Furthermore, technological innovation in industry creates new job opportunities and fosters the development of new industries. Final reflection. In this chapter, Adam Smith highlights the central role of industry and manufacturing in creating wealth and driving economic growth for nations. Specialization, competition, and the use of advanced technology in industry are key to optimizing production and reducing costs, benefiting both producers and consumers. Smith emphasizes that industry is not only an engine of economic growth but also a factor of social mobility and prosperity for citizens. As industry advances, nations strengthen and position themselves better in global trade, ensuring lasting benefits for society as a whole. In the next chapter, we will explore how morality and ethics are related to economic activities and the functioning of society. Chapter 15: Morality and Economics. In this chapter, Adam Smith explores the relationship between morality and economics, a theme that is intertwined with his view of self-interest and his concept of the invisible hand. Smith, although known for his defense of free markets and competition, also places significant emphasis on how ethics and moral values influence economic activities and the prosperity of a nation. The interaction between morality and economics is not only a philosophical issue but a practical matter for the functioning of markets and the creation of wealth. Self-interest and morality. Smith introduces the concept of self-interest as the force that motivates individuals to engage in the economy. According to his view, people act in search of their own benefit, whether through work, investment, or trade. However, Smith does not see self-interest as a selfish or destructive impulse. Instead, he believes that the pursuit of self-benefit can, through the process of exchange in competitive markets, benefit society as a whole, thanks to the invisible hand that guides individuals to make decisions that, unknowingly, result in collective benefits. Despite this emphasis on self-interest, Smith also stresses that morality is essential for the economic system to function properly. Self-interest alone is not enough to ensure a prosperous society if it is not balanced with values such as honesty, justice, and mutual respect. The economy relies on trust between individuals and institutions. People need to trust that exchanges are fair and that contracts will be honored. The role of virtue in trade. While Smith acknowledges the value of self-interest, he also emphasizes that moral virtue is fundamental for the proper functioning of the economy. People must be honest and respectful for the free market to operate efficiently. Without ethical behavior in markets, competition could become unfair, and trade could become a destructive activity rather than a constructive one. Smith sees morality as a guiding force in human actions that benefits society, even when individuals are seeking their own interest. This coexistence of self-interest with ethics is essential for the market system to function correctly. Competition should not be viewed as an end in itself but as a means to improve the lives of consumers and producers, always under the principles of justice and mutual respect. Social morality and the market. Smith emphasizes that morality not only refers to individual actions but also impacts social functioning. Societies that foster virtue, respect, and solidarity are more likely to have free markets that benefit everyone, not just the most powerful individuals. Social morality establishes the norms and values that govern behavior in markets and ensures that the weaker members are not exploited and justice is upheld in exchanges. According to Smith, collective well-being is achieved when individuals act according to moral principles and society promotes ethical behavior. Trade, though based on self-interest, becomes a mechanism of cooperation and mutual benefit when regulated by principles of justice and fairness. A morally strong society is one that distributes wealth more equitably and ensures that all individuals have the opportunity to participate in the economy fairly. The role of government in economic morality. Although Smith advocates for minimal government intervention in many aspects of the economy, he also acknowledges that the government has a role in preserving economic morality. The judicial system and laws are essential to maintaining justice in economic exchanges. The government must act to protect property rights, enforce contracts, and ensure that business practices adhere to principles of justice and honesty. However, Smith underscores that the government should not involve itself in regulating prices or directly intervening in markets, as such intervention could distort free trade and limit the ability of markets to self-regulate. Instead, the government should act as an impartial referee, ensuring that markets are fair and that individuals have the freedom to trade within an ethical framework. The market and the distribution of wealth. Smith also addresses how wealth distribution in a nation is linked to economic morality. Economic inequalities can arise when the market system is not regulated by ethical principles, leading to exploitation or abuse. It is important that nations foster an environment where wealth is not concentrated solely in the hands of a few but distributed in a way that all citizens can enjoy the benefits of trade. Economic morality also includes the social responsibility of entrepreneurs. Smith suggests that those who have the capacity to generate wealth should do so in a way that not only benefits their interests but also improves the well-being of society at large. Entrepreneurs must act with honesty and social responsibility so that their success does not depend on harming others or using unfair practices. Final reflection. In this chapter, Adam Smith demonstrates how morality and economics are deeply intertwined. Morality not only regulates individual behavior but also ensures the ethical functioning of the market and social justice in the distribution of wealth. While self-interest forms the basis of the market economy, morality is the force that ensures trade benefits society as a whole and that inequalities are mitigated. Smith emphasizes that economic success cannot be separated from ethics and mutual respect, and that a free market must be based on principles of justice and honesty. Ultimately, a prosperous and just economy depends on the combination of economic freedom and moral values. In the next chapter, we will explore how the evolution of the state and legal institutions influence wealth creation and economic development. Chapter 16. The Evolution of the State and Wealth. In this chapter, Adam Smith explores the role of the state and legal institutions in the process of wealth creation and economic development. While Smith is known for his emphasis on free markets, he also acknowledges that the state plays a crucial role in managing and regulating the economy to ensure its effective functioning. Smith describes how state institutions, such as the legal system, fiscal policies, and public infrastructure, contribute to the economic growth and prosperity of a nation. The state as regulator of justice and property. One of the most important functions of the state, according to Smith, is the protection of property and the administration of justice. The legal system provides the necessary framework for individuals to own and trade goods and services securely. Legal security and contract enforcement are fundamental for the market to operate efficiently. Smith argues that the state must ensure that laws are just and protect the property rights of all citizens, regardless of their wealth or social position. An effective legal system ensures that contracts are respected and disputes are resolved fairly. This, in turn, encourages investment and trade, as individuals trust that their property rights will be protected. Furthermore, the state must act against injustices and unfair business practices. Smith emphasizes that policies should ensure that the weaker members of society are not exploited and that equity principles are upheld in economic transactions. Without an efficient legal system, trade and investment would be exposed to risks and abuses. Provision of public goods. Another essential role of the state is the provision of public goods. Smith argues that there are goods and services that cannot be efficiently provided by the private sector due to their public nature. These include, among others, national defense, infrastructure, such as roads, bridges, ports, and educational services. For example, national defense is a public good that benefits all citizens, regardless of whether they contribute directly to its funding. Without a defense system, the nation would be vulnerable to attacks and conflicts, which would harm economic and social stability. Similarly, infrastructure is necessary to facilitate trade and the movement of goods within the country. Roads, ports, and transportation networks allow businesses to produce and distribute goods more effectively, increasing productivity and wealth. The state, therefore, must provide these public goods since the private market has no incentives to do so, as the benefits of these investments are for society at large and not for an individual or company. The state and education. Smith also acknowledges that education is an essential component in the economic and social development of a nation. An educated workforce is more productive and can contribute better to wealth creation. The state has the responsibility to provide basic education to citizens, especially those who lack access to private education. Universal education not only benefits individuals by providing them with better job opportunities but also increases the efficiency of the economy by allowing workers to improve their skills and participate in more productive industries. Smith argues that a well-managed public education system can increase a nation's human capital, which drives its long-term economic growth. Taxation and state financing. Smith also analyzes the role of taxation in financing the activities of the state. Despite being a strong proponent of free markets, Smith recognizes that the government needs resources to fulfill its essential responsibilities. Taxes, although necessary, must be equitable and just so as not to discourage investment or negatively affect productivity. Smith establishes that taxes should be progressive so that those with greater economic capacity contribute more. Additionally, taxes should be clear so that citizens know how much they must pay and how resources are distributed to finance public goods. However, Smith warns that governments must be cautious with public spending. Excessive state expenditure can lead to inflation and debt, which can harm long-term economic stability. Efficient management of public resources is essential for sustainable economic growth. The government and protection against monopolies. Smith also addresses the role of the government in regulating monopolies and promoting competition. Monopolies, according to Smith, are harmful to the market as they restrict competition, increase prices, and reduce the quality of goods and services. The government must intervene to prevent companies from colluding or using their market power to exploit consumers. By protecting competition and preventing monopolies, the government ensures that markets operate efficiently, benefiting consumers and fostering innovation. The government and the promotion of social welfare. Finally, Smith acknowledges that the state has a role in promoting social welfare. Although he advocates for economic freedom, he also believes that the government should intervene to ensure that wealth is distributed justly. Public policies should focus on reducing economic inequalities and providing equal opportunities for all citizens. The state must ensure that the most disadvantaged have access to the necessary conditions to actively participate in the economy, which includes access to education, health, and employment. Final reflection. This chapter emphasizes that, while Smith is a strong advocate of free markets, he also recognizes the importance of an effective government for economic development and social welfare. The state plays an essential role in protecting property, providing public goods, and regulating monopolies, ensuring that the economy functions fairly and efficiently. The government must also be responsible in the use of public resources, maintaining equitable taxation and promoting equal opportunities. Through prudent management, the state can create an environment where free markets thrive and wealth is distributed more equitably. In the next chapter, we will explore the role of banks and credit in the economy and how the banking system can contribute to the economic growth of a nation. Chapter 17, Banks and Credit. In this chapter, Adam Smith delves into the role of banks and the credit system in the economy. Banks, as financial intermediaries, play a crucial role in the wealth creation process by facilitating the distribution of money and capital for productive investments. Credit, in turn, allows businesses and individuals to access funds that would otherwise not be available for projects and immediate consumption. However, Smith also warns about the dangers of a poorly managed credit system, as it can contribute to inflation or economic instability if not properly regulated. The role of banks in the economy. Smith begins the chapter by highlighting how essential banks are for the functioning of the modern economy. Banks act as intermediaries between those who have savings and those who need capital to invest or undertake projects. By facilitating loans, banks allow money to flow into the most productive activities, increasing the efficiency of the economy and contributing to its growth. Additionally, banks help channel individuals' savings into productive investments, increasing the availability of capital for businesses. This ability to efficiently redistribute money is crucial for economic growth and innovation, as it enables businesses to finance their projects without having to wait for sufficient personal savings. Money creation through credit. One of the most innovative aspects of the banking system, according to Smith, is its ability to create money through credit. When banks provide loans, they are not necessarily using their own money, but rather creating credit that can be used by borrowers to make purchases or invest in their businesses. This process of money creation expands the amount of money in circulation in the economy, which can foster economic growth and expansion. However, Smith also recognizes the risks associated with this process. If banks issue too much credit without a solid base of actual savings and tangible goods, they can generate inflation and an economic bubble. Excessive credit can lead to overproduction or a mismatch between supply and demand, which can result in economic crises and recessions. Credit and its impact on trade. Credit not only facilitates economic growth within the borders of a country but also has a significant impact on international trade. Merchants can obtain financing to import and export goods, allowing them to expand their operations and access global markets. Just as with domestic investments, international credit enables nations and companies to access additional resources that would otherwise not be available, thus promoting international trade and economic globalization. Smith underscores that credit is a powerful tool for facilitating trade and wealth creation, but it must be managed carefully to avoid the dangers of overexposure or mismanagement of loans. The problem of credit overexpansion. Although credit can be a useful tool for economic growth, Smith warns about the dangers of credit overexpansion. Banks must be responsible when issuing loans, as lending more money than is actually available in terms of goods and resources can generate inflation and currency devaluation. Smith points out that irresponsible banking, which grants loans without adequate guarantees, can create an economic bubble. These bubbles, when they burst, can lead to financial crises and economic recessions, affecting both banks and citizens as well as the economy in general. The regulation of credit and the role of the government. Smith suggests that the government should intervene to regulate the credit system and ensure that banks operate responsibly. Creating a solid and regulated banking system is essential to avoid the dangers of irresponsible credit expansion. The government can set limits on the amount of credit that banks can issue and ensure that loans are granted prudently. Government control should be moderate and not excessively interfere in the credit market, but laws must be clear and strict to ensure that banks act transparently and responsibly. Without an adequate regulatory system, credit can be misused, leading to severe economic imbalances. The stability of the banking system and public trust. Public trust in the banking system is essential for its functioning. Banks must maintain prudent management of their resources and operate transparently so that citizens have confidence in the financial system. The bankruptcy of a bank or poor management of funds can have devastating effects on the economy, as it may lead to a loss of confidence and a collapse of the financial system. Smith emphasizes that banks must operate cautiously, ensuring that their assets and liabilities are balanced and that credit is granted prudently. Trust in the banking system is the foundation for an efficient credit market and sustained economic growth. Final reflection. In this chapter, Adam Smith explains how banks and credit are essential components in a modern economy. Banks serve as intermediaries, facilitating the flow of money and capital between savers and borrowers, allowing economies to grow and develop. Credit, when used correctly, can promote business growth, international trade, and innovation. However, Smith also points out that credit must be managed responsibly. An unregulated banking system can lead to excessive credit expansion, resulting in inflation, economic bubbles, and financial crises. The government must play a role in regulating and overseeing the credit system to maintain economic stability. In the next chapter, we will explore how global competition affects the efficiency of national economies and how countries must adapt to thrive in a globalized market. Chapter 18: Trade and Global Competition. In this chapter, Adam Smith analyzes the impact of international trade and global competition on national economies. While international trade allows nations to specialize in the production of goods in which they have a comparative advantage, it also creates a highly competitive environment where nations must adapt to the changing conditions of the global market. Smith argues that trade and global competition are powerful forces that drive efficiency, innovation, and economic growth. International trade and specialization. Smith reaffirms his theory of specialization in trade, highlighting that nations should focus on producing goods that they can make most efficiently, leveraging their comparative advantages. By specializing in the production of certain goods, a country can achieve higher returns in terms of labor and capital. International trade allows countries to exchange goods in which they are not particularly efficient for those they can produce more profitably. This exchange process benefits all involved countries, as it allows each nation to access products that would otherwise be more expensive to produce on their own. Smith asserts that free trade is fundamental to the prosperity of nations, as it removes artificial barriers and promotes global economic growth. Global competition and innovation. One of the most important aspects Smith highlights is the impact of global competition on innovation and efficiency. As countries compete for access to international markets, they are forced to continuously improve their production processes, technologies, and product quality. Competition not only leads to price reductions but also encourages companies to innovate to differentiate themselves from their competitors. Smith observes that competition in international markets benefits consumers by offering higher quality products at lower prices. Additionally, global competition generates a learning effect, in which nations and companies adopt new technologies and better practices to remain competitive in the global market. Capital mobility and globalization. In a global trade environment, capital also becomes more mobile, allowing companies to invest in different countries based on the most favorable conditions. Smith notes that capital mobility promotes investment in the most productive sectors and generates economic growth by directing resources to the most profitable projects. Globalization has allowed capital to flow freely across borders, facilitating the development of new industries and the expansion of businesses. Nations with open markets and proper regulations can attract foreign investments and take advantage of opportunities arising in the global market. Trade barriers and their effects. Although Smith is a strong proponent of free trade, he also points out that trade barriers, such as tariffs and quotas, can hinder the efficiency of the global market. Protectionist policies, which seek to limit foreign competition to protect domestic industries, often lead to inefficiencies and higher prices for consumers. Smith argues that these barriers not only harm consumers by restricting their access to cheaper goods, but also discourage innovation and reduce productivity in domestic industries. Instead of fostering economic development, trade barriers create an artificial environment that limits competition and hinders value creation. The role of government in global trade. Although Smith is a proponent of free trade, he also recognizes that the government has a role to play in protecting national interests. The government must ensure that international trade occurs under conditions of fairness and equity and that foreign policies do not harm the most vulnerable sectors of the economy. However, Smith emphasizes that the role of the government should be limited to facilitating trade through fair trade agreements and protecting property rights and the enforcement of international contracts. The government should not excessively intervene in markets or impose restrictions that obstruct global competition. Global inequality and trade. Although global trade can benefit nations as a whole, Smith also acknowledges that inequalities exist between countries in terms of access to markets and resources. Developed nations often have a competitive advantage in sectors such as technology and manufacturing, while developing countries may face challenges in competing in a global market. However, Smith argues that as poorer nations integrate into international trade, they can find opportunities to grow by specializing in sectors where they have a comparative advantage. Global trade allows poorer nations to access international markets and participate in the exchange of goods that allows them to develop and reduce poverty. Final reflection. In this chapter, Adam Smith highlights how international trade and global competition are essential factors for economic growth and wealth creation. Through trade, nations can specialize in producing goods where they have a comparative advantage, improving global efficiency and promoting economic development. Global competition fosters innovation, improves product quality, and reduces prices, benefiting both producers and consumers. However, trade barriers and protectionist policies can limit these benefits and create inefficiencies in the economy. Smith emphasizes that the government should facilitate free trade, protect property rights, and create an environment where competition and innovation can flourish. By promoting free trade and global competition, nations can improve their prosperity and strengthen their economies. In the next chapter, we will explore how corruption and unfair practices negatively impact the economy and wealth creation in a nation. Chapter 19. Corruption and its impact on the economy. In this chapter, Adam Smith discusses how corruption can negatively affect the economy and the overall welfare of a nation. While free trade and competition are essential for economic growth, corruption and unfair practices can undermine these principles, generate inefficiency and inequality, and harm wealth creation. Smith examines how corruption in both government and the private sector can hinder economic development and diminish trust in institutions. Corruption in government. Smith begins the chapter by highlighting that government corruption is one of the main obstacles to the proper functioning of the economy. When government officials make decisions based on personal interests rather than the common good, the distribution of resources and the enforcement of laws are compromised. Corruption in governmental institutions can increase transaction costs and create inequality in the enforcement of laws, as the rich and powerful can evade responsibility. Smith argues that when governments favor certain economic groups or businesses in exchange for bribes or special privileges, the market becomes distorted. Rather than resources being distributed equitably and based on merit, corruption creates an environment where self-interest and injustice prevail, undermining economic efficiency. Corruption can also have a negative effect on taxation. If taxes are not collected fairly, and if tax money is mismanaged due to corruption, the government will not be able to provide the essential public goods for economic development, such as education, infrastructure, and security. Poor management of public resources reduces the nation's ability to invest in productive projects and technologies that promote innovation. Corruption in the private sector. Smith also refers to how corruption in the private sector can have an equally negative impact on the economy. Monopolies and business combinations that seek to manipulate the market or restrict competition through corrupt practices can distort the free competition that should govern the economy. These unfair practices limit the ability of smaller and more competitive businesses to thrive and develop, creating a less efficient economic environment. When companies seek to gain unfair advantages through corruption, such as bribing officials, price manipulation, tax evasion, etc., this also harms consumers. Prices are artificially inflated, and product quality may be affected. Consumers lose the ability to access quality products at fair prices, creating economic inefficiency and an unequal distribution of resources. Distrust and economic instability. Smith observes that corruption generates widespread distrust in economic and political institutions, which can have devastating effects on the economy. A lack of trust in the fairness of the economic system can cause investors and entrepreneurs to lose confidence in economic growth prospects and prefer to keep their money out of the system. This can lead to capital flight, reduced investment, and a slowdown in economic development. Distrust also affects the labor market, as workers may feel that their rights are not being fairly protected, reducing motivation and commitment to their jobs. The inequality created by corruption can foster a widespread sense of social inequality and, as a result, destabilize social cohesion. The effect of corruption on economic growth. Smith argues that, ultimately, corruption reduces a nation's economic growth. Corruption increases the cost of doing business, reduces competition, distorts the allocation of resources, and decreases productivity. Instead of resources flowing into the most productive investments, corruption causes resources to be wasted or misinvested. Economic growth depends on resources being used efficiently and transparently. If governments and businesses are more focused on maximizing their own profits through corrupt practices, rather than contributing to the common good and productive development, wealth creation in the nation is severely affected. Competition is reduced, and innovation is hindered, which diminishes opportunities for long-term economic development. Fighting corruption, a collective responsibility. Smith maintains that the fight against corruption must be a sustained collective effort. Governments must be accountable to their citizens and ensure that institutions remain transparent and fair. The legal system must act as an independent overseer, ensuring that those who engage in corrupt practices are duly punished. In the private sector, businesses must operate ethically and with social responsibility, ensuring that their practices do not harm society or distort the market. Additionally, citizens have an important role in reporting and opposing corruption at all levels. Final reflection. This chapter underscores the importance of transparency and fairness in the economy. Corruption, both in government and the private sector, undermines economic efficiency and trust in institutions. By creating inefficiencies in markets, distorting competition, and increasing the costs of economic transactions, corruption limits opportunities for economic growth and the development of a nation. Smith reminds us that economic growth and prosperity depend on an economic and political system based on ethical principles, where justice, transparency, and free competition are the norm. A corruption-free environment is essential for the sustainable development of nations and the well-being of their citizens. In the next chapter, we will address how the lessons from Smith's The Wealth of Nations are still applicable to the modern economy and the challenges faced by nations today. Chapter 20. Conclusion. Lessons for the Modern Economy. In this final chapter, Adam Smith reflects on the key lessons that can be drawn from his work The Wealth of Nations and how his ideas continue to be relevant in the modern economic context. Despite advances in technology, trade, and economic policy, Smith's fundamental principles remain crucial for understanding how economies function and how wealth is created globally. Smith offers a vision of how the free economy, fair trade, and the role of government must be balanced to foster prosperity and stability in the contemporary economy. The legacy of the invisible hand. Smith concludes by reiterating his famous theory of the invisible hand, according to which individuals pursuing their own economic interests unintentionally contribute to the general welfare. This concept remains fundamental to modern economics, where markets are seen as the best regulators for the allocation of resources and determination of prices. Although today's economies are much more complex than those Smith described, the invisible hand continues to be a key tool for understanding how markets can function without the need for excessive government intervention. Smith argues that free competition and voluntary exchange allow goods and services to be distributed more efficiently, resulting in greater prosperity for all. However, he also points out that for this process to work effectively, adequate conditions must exist, such as respect for property rights, enforcement of contracts, and the maintenance of a fair legal framework. The need for a responsible government. While Smith is known for his ideas on free markets, he also recognizes the need for a responsible government to ensure a fair and stable economic environment. In the modern economy, the role of government remains crucial in providing public goods, regulating the financial system, maintaining competition in markets, and protecting private property. Smith advocates for a limited government that focuses on specific areas such as national defense, administration of justice, and the provision of public infrastructure. In today's context, this can extend to protecting the environment, education, and public health, areas where the private market cannot operate effectively without generating inequality or social exclusion. However, Smith also warns against excessive government intervention, which can distort markets and limit innovation. The government should be a facilitator, not a controller of the economy, and its interventions should be moderate and transparent to ensure that the principles of free competition are not undermined. Global competition and economic interdependence. Smith also reflects on how globalization has transformed trade and competition in the modern economy. While global competition creates new opportunities for nations, it also presents significant challenges, such as economic inequalities and trade conflicts. However, Smith believed that free trade benefits all nations involved, as it allows for specialization and the creation of value in sectors where each nation has a comparative advantage. In a globalized world, nations must be flexible and adapt quickly to changing international market conditions. The ability to innovate, reduce costs, and improve product quality will be key to competing in an increasingly competitive global market. Smith also emphasizes the importance of strong economic institutions and respect for international agreements to foster cooperation and global trade. Trade barriers, monopolies, and corruption must be fought to ensure that the benefits of global trade are distributed fairly and effectively. Wealth distribution and social justice. In his final reflections, Smith also addresses the issue of economic inequality and wealth distribution. While free markets can generate wealth and economic growth, Smith recognizes that inequalities can arise, especially if the market favors the more powerful and labor and social conditions are not adequately regulated. Social justice and equal opportunities must be priorities for modern governments. While the market can be effective in creating wealth, the government must ensure that all citizens have access to education, healthcare, and employment. Wealth redistribution through progressive tax policies and social welfare programs can help reduce inequalities and provide equal opportunities for all. Final reflection: the applicability of Smith's ideas today. Smith concludes his work by affirming that the ideas about wealth creation and market functioning that he formulated in The Wealth of Nations remain relevant in the modern economic context. While today's economies are far more complex than in Smith's time, the fundamental principles of competition, free markets, self-interest, limited government, and international trade are still crucial to understanding and fostering economic growth. The right balance between free markets and government interventions is necessary to build a prosperous, just, and sustainable economy. Nations must adapt to the challenges of the modern world, but always based on the universal principles of fair competition, economic justice, and transparency. Smith leaves an important lesson for contemporary economists and political leaders. A prosperous economy not only depends on wealth creation but also on how that wealth is distributed, how social justice is maintained, and how trade and competition benefit society as a whole. To conclude this audiobook based on The Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith, I want to leave you with a final reflection on how the teachings from this book remain essential for the modern economy. Smith offers us a clear vision of how free markets, competition, and moderate government intervention are key to fostering a prosperous and just economy. Despite technological advancements and global changes, the fundamental principles Smith proposed are still applicable to how we understand wealth creation and economic distribution today. The balance between competition and social justice is crucial to ensure that all members of society have opportunities to prosper. As leaders, entrepreneurs, or citizens, it is vital that we remember that a successful economy is not only measured by accumulated wealth but also by the fairness in its distribution and the sustainability of its growth. If you have enjoyed this content and wish to learn more about economics, entrepreneurship, and how you can apply these principles to your daily life, don't forget to subscribe to Audio Mentors, where we continue to share books, ideas, and knowledge that will help you better understand the principles guiding today's economic world. Also, I would love to hear your opinion about this audiobook. Leave a comment telling us what you think of the content and if there's a book you would like us to narrate in the future. Your feedback is very important to us. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Adam Smith's classic work. See you in the next audiobook.